Mrs. Bezos is getting paid. He's worth $100+ billion.
137, they said.
Wow. So she's going to get half
does not
of
fall
that.
apart because something inside them broke, but because the world breaks them like a soulless toy played with and discarded, forgotten in the corner of a room. Filled with laughter, they no longer belong to Jeff Bezos. Once hailed as the icon of success, carries within him a quiet emptiness and echo of loneliness that whispers through the cracks of his carefully built empire where only memories remain. And hidden within those memories is a scream that no one ever heard, a silent scream buried under the noise of fortune and fame. When Elon Musk and Joe Rogan laughed, when they turned his pain into banter, when they dissected his heartbreak under studio lights, the damage was not just to a man but to every soul that ever believed in a love that lasted beyond the glimmer of gold. Jeff had wealth, he had power, he had the entire world watching him in awe, but he did not have the one face that could make his mornings feel warm again or his nights feel soft and safe. Mackenzie Scott had left, and with her went the last piece of his calm. Elon Musk, the man the world calls the king of space, the genius who sees light in the darkest corners. Even he has seen light crumble into shadows when he could no longer hold a marriage together, when he watched love turn into court documents and promises into ashes. And still people cheer for him, as if the noise could cover the silence inside his own chest, as if his tweets could fill the rooms he sleeps in alone. Tweets that appear with fire and disappear with shame, like a heartbeat that cannot decide whether to fight or to give up. Joe Rogan sits in his studio and mocks and questions and smiles as if pain was a performance. He invites Elon and they talk about Jeff Bezos, and they mention the divorce and the teacher and the billions, and they laugh. But somewhere in that laughter is a sharpness, a dagger of judgment aimed not just at Jeff, but at everyone who ever lost something they could not replace. Everyone who ever gave everything and walked away with nothing but silence and a fading photograph. And Mackenzie, who once stood beside Jeff through years of building and breaking, now stands apart, painted as a gold digger, as a symbol of betrayal. But no one asks what she endured. No one asks what it feels like to love a man who is too busy building the future to notice the cracks in the present. Did she take money? Or did she leave with the weight of decades? Did she sign her name, or did she leave behind the silence of nights spent waiting for someone who never came home? Did she really win, or was she just escaping the quiet death of a life unlived? When Elon tweets about ex-wives destroying civilizations, when he deletes it hours later, was it anger, or was it grief? Was it bitterness, or was it recognition of a pain he knew too well, a pain that never really leaves, even when you dress it up in sarcasm and send it out into the world in 280 characters? Elon talks about narrative control.
It's true. Jeff and I are getting divorced. But let's be clear. This isn't a breakup. It's a strategic exit after completing my mission.
Let's not pretend he doesn't have choice. He knows he has choice. He has hot women hitting him up all the time.
The
Let's not pretend
microphones. There is something bleeding, something raw, something human and fragile. Jeff Bezos, who once seemed untouchable, now feels like a man made of glass, a man who once built rockets to escape gravity and now cannot escape the pull of his own past. They speak of his yacht, his mansion, his money, but no one sees the empty chair at his table. No one sees the way his voice trembles when he talks about nothing. Can anyone imagine what Jeff feels when he stands alone on that yacht, watching the sea stretch out like a mirror of everything he lost? Does he think of her? Does he curse her? Or does he blame himself? Does he remember the days when love was simple and mornings smelled like coffee, and hope, not power, not press releases, just love, pure and terrifying and real? Does he cry? Does he scream? Or does he just breathe, because even breathing sometimes feels like too much? And Elon, with all his brilliance, with all his missions to Mars, still cannot navigate the small soft universe of the human heart. He too has loved and lost and loved again and lost again and tried and failed and tried again. But love is not a launch system, and marriage is not an equation. It is a storm. It is a silence. It is a hand reaching out in the dark, hoping for another. And sometimes that other hand never comes. Sometimes all you touch is air, and you learn to live with the ache. Joe Rogan is not cruel. He is curious, but his curiosity sometimes sounds like cruelty to
they're not really built for that kind of a life. And I think even in her choice of friends, again, like she did have stuff going on. She was a journalist. She was a helicopter pilot. She came from nothing and made something of herself. But she's in this position now in life, and she has access to the world's finest minds, and she chooses to befriend the likes
and
of
their empires. This is about all of us, about love that dies slowly in silence, that grows louder, about laughter that hides wounds and words that never really heal, about the spaces we leave behind and the stories we carry alone. This is about a world that claps when billionaires fall, but forgets that even they have hearts.
And has to overcome that. And these are some experiences you know from growing up, because you struggled with dyslexia. So how did you get through that? And did that inspire this book?
This book is, I say all about that. It's for the 8-year-old self, me, who really felt dumb. And I did. I sat in the back of the class. I was just quiet, so they kind of pushed me along in public school, and I kept going. And then I really, really wanted to be a journalist. That's all I wanted to be. And I was like, I can't write. It was horrible. And then I went to community college, and I had this teacher, and she goes, I want you to write for the school paper. I was like, I can't really write. And she goes, well, just write without thinking about, every time I get really emotional, without thinking about spelling or punctuation. And I wrote, I don't remember what the story
that sits between two people like a wall made of sighs and missed moments, the kind that builds over years until love no longer breathes. And then came the cameras, the statements, the announcements, where the world pretended to understand, but no one really did. People said she took half, people said she won, people said he moved on, but no one asked what it cost them both to get there, what they lost along the way, what it feels like to be reduced to a figure, to a case study, to a punchline. Elon Musk and Joe Rogan sit across from each other with the comfort of men who no longer cry. They dissect the divorce, they chuckle at the new man, they marvel at the absurdity of a billionaire replaced by a high school teacher, and in their laughter hides the fear that maybe one day they too will be forgotten, replaced, and seen. Joe Rogan speaks with a voice made of smoke and steel. He turns pain into performance and emotions into entertainment. He pokes at stories like a child pokes at wounds, curious, not cruel, but still careless. And Elon
attended the bride-to-be's bachelorette party in Paris. In fact, the future Mrs. Bezos told the Wall Street Journal in 2023,
the one that says I have survived but not healed, the one that whispers I would trade everything for peace. Elon says things that people quote but forget. He deletes tweets, and the world calls it strategy, but maybe it is regret. Maybe he wakes at 3 a.m. and reads his own words and hears her voice and deletes the past because he cannot delete the ache. He talks of civilization, of media, of power, and in between his breath there is a man who has never really rested, a man who builds machines to forget that he cannot fix the human heart. They talk about the Washington Post, they talk about narrative and influence, and all the while the real story lies in the things they do not say, in the way Ellen's voice hardens when the topic shifts to Mackenzie, in the way Joe changes the subject just before it gets to real. They say Jeff is a genius. They say he is a machine, but machines do not bleed and men do. No one sees the way Jeff walks when the cameras are off. No one notices the way he looks at couples in love or the way his fingers tremble when he touches memories. No one talks about the nights he wakes up from dreams he cannot explain, dreams where she is still there, where the house is still warm, where love still lives. And then he opens his eyes and remembers this is the tragedy of becoming more than human, of becoming a symbol, a headline, a statistic. Jeff Bezos is not a man anymore. He is a metaphor for success and failure and greed and power, and everyone forgets that beneath that metaphor is a man with hands that once held hope and now hold silence. And Mackenzie, she is no villain, she is no saint, she is a woman who chose to walk away, who chose her voice over comfort, who chose the unknown over the familiar, and for that, she is branded. For that, she is measured by numbers, not by nights spent waiting, not by the 1,000 kindnesses that never made the news, not by the years of listening and giving and being invisible. When she left, it was not with laughter, it was with a quiet resolve, with the sadness of someone who once believed and no longer could. She did not take half, she took what was hers, the part of her that still believed she could be whole again. She married again, and the world laughed, but what they did not see was the courage it takes to love again, after loss, to trust again, after betrayal, to risk silence again, after being silenced for so long. Joe Rogan says the teacher never got to choose the color of the walls. Elon Musk smiles like he agrees, but they do not understand that love is not about walls, love is not about choices. Love is about showing up every day, even when the light is gone, even when the laughter fades. Love is about sitting in the silence and saying, I am still here. And maybe that teacher did just that. Maybe he showed up when Jeff could not. Maybe he listened when no one else did. Maybe he was enough. And maybe that is what haunts Elon and Joe. Not the money, not the power, not the press, but the simple, unbearable truth that sometimes love chooses someone else. Sometimes, despite everything you build, someone leaves because they no longer feel seen. And no machine, no rocket, no podcast.
So if you haven't heard, Jeff Bezos has lost his mind. He has completely
not rebuild the one that broke inside him. Joe Rogan laughs and questions, but never asks what it means to lose. Someone slowly over years to watch a forever dissolve like smoke, and so they sit in their spaceships. In studios and boardrooms surrounded by noise and brilliance, and still alone, still searching, still aching, and the world watches and calls it greatness and forgets that sometimes even greatness cries. Some empires are not built on land, or sky, or space. They are built on silence, on the weight of unspoken words, on the cracks in a dinner table where no one speaks anymore. Jeff Bezos, the man, the myth, the visionary, was not just building Amazon. He was building distance, a kind of cold success that slowly freezes everything soft and warm and real, until one day he came home to a house that still had furniture, still had light, still had wine in the kitchen, but felt more like a waiting room than a home, where love had packed its bags long before Mackenzie ever did. And still the world claps, and still the world marvels at his net worth, at his rockets, at his vision, while inside him something had already fallen, something no news outlet could cover, something no shareholder report could define. The man who could move markets could not move her heart, not anymore. And when she left, she did not leave with rage, she left with resignation, like someone who had already cried every tear in secret, who had already whispered goodbye to herself 100 times before she ever said it out loud. Elon Musk watches this from the outside, but maybe not really from the outside. Maybe he watches it like a mirror, like a prophecy unfolding, like something he too was trying to avoid. As if by mocking it he could run from it, as if by turning it into content he could turn it into control. But pain is not a product, and hearts are not headlines, and no matter how many satellites you launch, the ache remains grounded inside the chest, where even stardust cannot reach. Joe Rogan throws jokes like pebbles into a lake and waits for ripples, waits for reactions. And when he speaks of Jeff, he speaks of him like an idea, like a character, not a man, not someone who once fell in love under ordinary skies, not someone who once stayed up reading poetry aloud in the dark, not someone who once danced barefoot in the kitchen and believed that would be enough for a lifetime. He speaks of him like a name on a file, like data on a screen. And somewhere between the laughter and the smirks lies the truth, that no one wants to name, the truth that even billionaires can be abandoned, that even visionaries can feel unseen, that even kings can come home to an empty throne. Jeff Bezos, with all his numbers, could not calculate the moment Mackenzie stopped believing, could not build a device to measure the depth of that silence. And yet, the story did not end there. She moved on, and her moving on was seen as betrayal, as mockery, as a downgrade. Because how could someone go from a man who owns galaxies to a man who teaches chemistry? But no one asked what the teacher gave her. Maybe he gave her stillness, maybe he gave her conversation, maybe he saw her not as a partner in an empire, but as a person, maybe in his presence.
About you, about Brooks, that's gonna take us by surprise, you think?
I think that the show is, it reveals a lot about, relationship things that I've been dealing with privately that nobody knows about, and just, life post-divorce and living with my sisters in our 20s. It's sort of like a Sex in the City meets Swamp People. We're from the deep, deep South, and we all live in Manhattan now, and we're chasing our dreams. And so,
and you're all stunning, by the way.
What, I'm the prettiest, right? No, just kidding.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
You're all equally gorgeous. And are you still single and ready to mingle right now? Anyone you're interested in? Maybe
Too bright for someone who has only ever been praised, for solving problems that do not bleed, who has only ever been admired, for designing futures that do not cry. Joe Rogan shifts the conversation to Jeff's yacht, to the bridge that had to be taken apart to let it through. And the world gasps at the extravagance, but no one sees the metaphor that sometimes you can build something so massive it cannot pass through anything sacred, that sometimes in trying to have everything you break everything that mattered. And when Jeff stood on that yacht, did he feel like a god? Or did he feel like a man alone on a monument to everything he lost? And in the quiet of that image, the image of a man drifting on water, with all the wealth and none of the warmth, lies the essence of this story. That no amount of innovation can outpace grief, that no number of stock options can replace the sound of a familiar voice saying, "I missed you." That no rocket ship can return you to the exact moment when everything was still whole. Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Joe Rogan. These are not just names, they are myths, they are moving targets for admiration and anger and envy, and behind them are lives filled with all the same fragile things that the rest of us hold: hope, disappointment, longing, betrayal, healing, pretending, and then breaking again. Elon, with his army of followers, with his grip on platforms, with his endless need to be heard, cannot quiet the part of him that still hurts, cannot mute the memory of marriages that ended with more silence than screaming. And Joe, who makes the world laugh, who makes the world question, sits sometimes with a look in his eye like he too remembers someone who left without turning back. And Jeff walks forward into more headlines, more wealth, more progress, and still somewhere inside him is a night he cannot forget, a goodbye he did not see coming a love that turned into distance, into formality, into nothing. And when he looks at the stars, does he still dream, or does he now only calculate? When he reads Mackenzie's name, does it still sting, or has he learned to read around it? Because that is what we do. We learn to live around the pain, we do not erase it. We build empires around it, we laugh around it, we marry around it, we fly rockets around it. And we pretend we are fine until one day we are sitting alone at a dinner table set for two, but only one seat is ever filled. This is the price of building dreams, while neglecting the hands that helped build them. This is the price of becoming everything the world wants, and losing the one person who saw you before the world did. This is not just about Bezos and Musk and Rogan, this is about all of us. This is about what happens when we mistake power for love, when we confuse applause for affection, when we assume someone will always be there until they are not. And the truth is, some things cannot be bought, not time, not trust, not tenderness. And once they are gone, we can only hope to find echoes of them in strangers and books and songs and memories that break us and bind us at once. There is a loneliness that only power can bring, a silence so deep it drowns out even the loudest crowds. Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Joe Rogan, these names echo like thunder, but inside their chests there are storms. No one sees storms of grief, regret, fear, and unanswered questions. They wear their success like armor, but beneath it lies a heart that beats with wounds old and raw, wounds that no amount of money or fame can heal. Elon Musk, the man who laughs in the face of danger, who smokes joints on podcasts, who boldly tweets, "The future," is still haunted by the ghosts of what he lost, the marriages that crumbled like dry leaves, the children who grew without him, the love that slipped through fingers too busy to hold it. He masks his pain with sarcasm and tweets, but every now and then that mask cracks and a flicker of the broken man shines through. The man who wanted to be a hero but sometimes felt more like a stranger in his own life. Joe Rogan, the voice that challenges everything, that laughs and questions and provokes, also knows the ache of being unseen, the quiet desperation that hides behind a joke, the longing to be understood beyond the microphone, beyond the spotlight. He speaks for millions.
Imitate art, and you are going to go into space someday. Someday soon. Someday very soon. I'm really excited about it, and of course a little nervous, and I'm taking an incredible group of female
Earth beneath him, colder than he imagined, the man who commanded armies of technology, but could not command the heart of the woman who once promised forever, who saw his empire grow, but felt herself shrink until the silence between them became too loud, too vast to cross. And when she walked away, she took not just money but a part of his soul, a reminder that even gods can fall. The emotional fallout is not just a private affair. It is a spectacle, a show, a story retold in headlines and memes and tweets, but the truth is messy and painful and human. It is the sound of a man crying alone in a room full of gold. It is the fear of never being enough. No matter how much you build, how much you give, how much you fight to be seen and loved and held, ego fights vulnerability in a war that no one wins. Elon mocks, Jeff critiques. Elon wins, Elon mocks, Jeff critiques. Elon, Joe laughs at them both, but beneath the surface, they are all fighting the same battle, the battle to keep going, to keep building, to keep dreaming, while their hearts quietly bleed in the background, unnoticed, unheard, unseen. They are men who have everything and nothing all at once, kings of their worlds and prisoners of their pain. And Mackenzie Scott stands apart, a beacon of courage, a woman who chose to be whole over wealthy, who chose to be free over famous, who dared to rewrite her story in a world that prefers to tell stories about broken women, about gold diggers and villains, without ever stopping to listen to the quiet strength it takes to walk away, to start again, to give without expecting anything back, to be a light in the dark for those who have nothing. The hidden grief of powerful men is a paradox. It is the silence behind the noise, the tears behind the bravado, the nights spent wondering if it was all worth it, if the price of greatness is too high, if the love they lost was the only thing that really mattered. And maybe that is the lesson we all need to learn, that no matter how high we climb, how far we go, how much we achieve, we are still fragile, being still in need of touch, of understanding, of grace. And that sometimes the greatest strength is in letting go and admitting we are broken and asking for help. They say the media is against them. They say the world does not understand them, but maybe the world is just tired of seeing men in power pretending.
Elon Musk. Of course, it isn't too far-fetched to want the richest man in the world, who himself loves a bit of controversy every now and then, on the Joe Rogan Experience.
In some measure, like, the success of these online systems is sort of a function of
our own way to heal, because at the end of the day, Jeff, Elon, Joe, Mackenzie, and all of us are just stories waiting to be told, stories of love and loss, of dreams and despair, of laughter and tears, of silence and screams. And maybe if we listen closely, if we let go of judgment, if we open our hearts, we can find in these stories the truth of what it means to be human, and the light that shines even in The darkest nights, there comes a moment when the noise fades, when the world stops judging, and the heart begins to listen, when the masks fall away and the soul stands bare, exposed, vulnerable. And yet unbroken. Jeff, Elon, Joe, Mackenzie, and all the broken pieces of their lives remind us that resilience is not about never falling, but about rising again every time we fall, about finding light even when all we see is darkness, about holding on when everything inside us screams to let go. There is a quiet strength in acceptance, in acknowledging the pain, the loss, the loneliness, without shame, without anger, without pretending that everything is fine. There is freedom in facing our shadows, in naming our fears and embracing the imperfect, messy, beautiful truth of who we are. No matter how much power or money or fame we have, no matter how many rockets we launch or podcasts we host or empires we build. And so Jeff Bezos walks on, not as a god, not as a legend, but as a man who has known loss, who has felt grief, who has learned that the greatest achievements mean little without love, that money cannot buy back time, that the heart cannot be measured in billions, but only in moments, in connection, in kindness and forgiveness. Elon Musk laughs. Still he tweets, still he pushes boundaries, but beneath the bravado, there is a man learning to carry his scars with grace, to find peace in the chaos, to accept that some battles are not meant to be won but to be survived, and maybe in that survival, there is a new kind of victory, one that no headline can capture, one that only the soul can know. Joe Rogan speaks, still his voice carries far, but now maybe it carries something more than questions and jokes. Maybe it carries empathy, a bridge to the broken places inside all of us, a reminder that beneath the surface, we are all searching, all struggling, all longing for understanding, and maybe in that search, we find each other. And Mackenzie Scott shines like a quiet star, a testament to—
Why do you think you're sometimes misunderstood?
People do, they just see one side of me, and that's why I'm excited about this book and to be able to talk to you, because people get to see—
She lives without apology, and in her story lies a call to all of us to be brave, to be kind, to be real. This story is not just theirs, it is ours. It is the story of the human heart, the story of love and loss and hope and pain, the story that connects us all across time and space, across fame and fortune, across silence and noise. And if we listen with open hearts, we can hear in their journey the music of resilience, the song of healing, the promise of dawn after the darkest night. Thank you for being with us on this journey. If this story touched your heart, if it made you feel less alone, please like, share, and subscribe so more souls can find this light in the dark. Remember, every voice matters, every story counts, and together we can find strength in our shared humanity. The content shared in this video is for informational and emotional insight purposes only. It reflects interpretations and creative expression based on public figures and events. It is not intended to defame or harm any individual. All opinions are those of the creator. Viewers are encouraged to conduct their own research and engage with the subject matter respectfully. Thank you for watching.